I am an introvert. I love my space. I love to be alone. I love to reflect on things. And yes, sometimes I like to read books that reflect that feeling. Stories where the atmosphere is calm, even poetic. And yes, as an introvert, I love those moments when I recognize parts of myself in a fictional character. I think it does bring comfort, and sometimes it's even very inspirational. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Liv and I talk about books. And today I want to share with you 8 book recommendations for introverts. Quiet but powerful reads. So let's start with this tiny book. Where are you? This one. So I have the French version. I'm gonna put the English version right there. I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman, and this book is for those who believe the journey matters more than the destination. It is a story about resilience and courage. So this book was originally published in 1995, I believe. It is a dystopian short novel that has found quite a new popularity online recently. This book questions the meaning of life, but as I said, you need to appreciate more the journey than the actual destination. It follows a nameless girl. She is very young and she is locked inside a prison, an underground prison with 39 other women. They are totally cut off from the world above. She's the youngest and she's also the only one who never knew the life before. I really love the beginning of the book because you really feel like this oppressive atmosphere and the resilience of these women. I mean, those women lived in this underground prison for a very long time, years. They have no hope, no future, nothing new is happening, and it's only about survival. But survival for what? It is absurd, it's dark, and it's also heartbreaking. As an introvert, I could relate to her in some ways because she escapes through imagination. She is learning how to feel emotions she has never and will never probably experience. She hears the other women talk about the past, about their lives, and she can only imagine what it feels like, what it could feel like. So she tries to find emotions through those testimonies, through those experiences of others. I really love this aspect of the book in the first part where she tries to imagine the feelings. Sometimes I can relate to this feeling of imagining things, living your life through dreaming, because sometimes you're just scared of going to talk to people. I could really relate to this part of the book. But this is also a book about searching for meaning when the future doesn't exist, when there is no answer, no purpose. It is about moving forward and being only driven by the desire to understand. But you don't know if you're gonna find an answer. Sometimes you feel that step after step, day after day, we maybe search for a truth that we may never actually find. But we keep going forward anyway, because what if? What if we find an answer? I must say I enjoyed more the beginning of the book, the description of the prison, discovering this nameless character. I felt a bit frustrated by the last part, and by the end. It definitely is a dark book. When I finished the book, I wasn't feeling really well, I must say. Alright, the next book is for those who need courage, and it's Nettle and Bone by Kingfisher. So I love Kingfisher. I don't know if you can see, but I have all of those books from Kingfisher. I have some more, but they're on my Kindle. And this one is my favorite one of the author. It is a 5-star read for me. This is a dark fairy tale about quiet bravery, found family, and reclaiming your own power as a woman. So we follow Mara, and she's a very shy princess of a small kingdom. So her sister is married to the prince, and she's only meant to marry the prince if her sister dies. Obviously here it's to provide an heir. She needs to be available for the prince. She needs to stay in a convent. So she's always kind of lived in the background. As I said, she's kept available. She spends her life in a convent, isolated, but one day she learns that her sister is in danger. The prince is very cruel. Her sister is suffering. After years of being in the convent, she decides to act. She decides to do the impossible, save her sister, and above all, kill the prince. I really love this book because it's a quiet, cozy, dark fantasy with fairy tale vibes. And what I love the most is that it's the story of someone ordinary. Mara, she's a 33-year-old woman, I believe. She doesn't have superpower. She's very quiet. She's hidden. She's been hidden most of her life, really. She shouldn't be noticed. Even. She's unsure, but she still chooses to act. So I find this very inspiring. And along the way, along her quest, Mara gathers an unlikely band of companions. Okay, found family is one of my favorite tropes, and in this book, it's just beautifully done. Each of these companions will find strength in one another. I absolutely love the quest. I love Kingfisher's humor. It's a dark humor, but it's brilliant. I loved the animals, especially the dog made of bones. How is it called? Everybody talks about the chicken possessed by the demon, but actually the dog is the best one. I love them so much. This is a dark book. It deals with domestic violence, but in a fantasy setting. It's clever, it's well written, it's inspiring, it's funny, it's dark, it's cozy sometimes. And as an introvert, because this is the focus of the video, what I love the most is how Kingfisher shows that courage isn't about being unafraid. It's about taking the next step despite your fear. It's about leaving your comfort zone and do what's important. So as I said, I've read many of her books, but this one is definitely my favorite one of Kingfisher. Small things like these in English. I have the French edition. This book is for those who have lost faith in humanity and need to find it again. This is a very short novel, but it's also a 5-star read for me. This book shows you how you can be deeply moved by the daily life of an ordinary man and be left shaken in less than 120 pages. Yeah, that's the magic of Clarke Keegan. So in this book, we follow Bill Furlong, and he's living in a small Irish town. It sets in winter 1985, and yeah, the winter is rough. It's bitterly cold, life is hard. What I love is that through simple, almost ordinary descriptions, we see his daily routines. And at first, you wonder what's happening in this book actually. What is the purpose of all of this? You just follow his very ordinary life. But slowly, his inner journey begins to unfold. One day, an unexpected encounter changes Bill's routine, and it's gonna force him to question many things. In a world or in a society where people prefer to be silent and have faith in institutions, Bill, on the other hand, begins to question things. He begins to put things in perspective. And that is the first step. We discover the strength of small things. Those tiny, invisible acts that can change a life. And it all begins very simply, questioning things. Questioning what others simply prefer to ignore. This is a quiet yet powerful story. It also sheds light on the Magdalene laundries in Ireland. Those institutions where so many lives were broken. I cried at the end. I actually cried after reading the author's notes. Because believe me, you have to read them because it gives the story even greater weight. It explains context. It explains it all. Now, for all of you who live in their own world. Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. Again, I have the French version. I usually read in English. The books I buy in this format, in paper, are usually in French. Again, another 5-star read for me. It was the first 5-star read of 2025 for me. We follow this character, Piranesi, who lives in a very vast house of infinite dimensions. You have majestic halls, endless corridors filled with giant statues. Piranesi, he's alone, or almost, because there is another character who's the Other. The Other is a mysterious man who appears from time to time during the week, and Piranesi, well, he lives there and he records everything in his journals. The events of the house, he's researching things in the house, and also his most intimate thoughts. As an introvert, what struck me most is how the book shows that solitude is not emptiness. It is also peace. For him, this solitude is a sanctuary. And I think that's why this story speaks to introverts. I must say that at first, the first 100 pages, I was completely disoriented by the surreal elements. The tone is really surreal, and it took me a while to get into because I just couldn't understand anything. You know, they talk about corridors, about what happens if it goes from here to there. It's weird. But the writing is mysterious and poetic. You want to keep going into the story. As we go deeper into the story, small clues start to appear. What starts like a dreamlike fantasy that is difficult to apprehend slowly shifts into something closer to a psychological thriller. As the mystery deepens, I found myself piecing things together because Piranesi is a gentle, profoundly good, and innocent man. I love the description of how he finds beauty in nature, how he finds beauty in the small, very small, tiny details of the house. He feels almost childlike, but I really loved him as a character. That is a book that makes you reflect on solitude, resilience, maybe even philosophy. It's an enigmatic story. Again, maybe for those who prefer the journey over the final destination, maybe. It's an enigmatic story with countless possible interpretations, and I absolutely adored it. I finished this book at, I think, 2 o'clock in the morning. I just couldn't put it down. And after that, I was like, I need to talk about this book to other people. And I found myself checking online, forums, Reddit, you name it, just to have other people's point of view and to share my thoughts about this book. I loved it so much. And it's a perfect book for introverts. Now let's talk about this one. This one is for rebels in disguise. This is Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson, the Mistborn series, the first era, let's say. If you love epic fantasy and you want to find politics, rebellion, and one of the most unique magic system, Mistborn is for you. I'll be honest, the first 180 pages maybe were difficult to get through. I wasn't sure what I was reading. There is a lot of description of the magic system and I was lost. I couldn't apprehend what was going on with the magic system. There's a lot of information, a lot of characters. You don't know who's who, what's happening, but then it gets better. Then something happens and it gets better. You need to be patient. So the story takes place in a world ruled by, I don't know in English, a lord ruler. He has enslaved an entire population and given all power to the noble class. Hope doesn't exist for the Ska, which is the enslaved population, because it's been like that for 1,000 years, until a small crew of rebels comes up with an impossible plan: overthrow the empire itself. At the center of this, we have this young woman that is called Vin. She's a young girl that survived the stress by staying quiet. She's very shy, quiet. She observes, she trusts no one. But she soon discovers that she has rare powers. Powers tied to allomancy. Allomancy is the key magic of this world, and it's based on metals. She will learn to harness her abilities, and slowly she's gonna start to believe that she can actually rebel. At first, this isn't a loud rebellion. It's about quiet defiance, people who plan in whispers, act with precision, and Vin herself, she's not the extroverted, super powerful character. She learned that to stay alive, she needs to stay quiet. So she isn't the type to shout, she moves in the shadows, and that makes her even more dangerous. And that's why I think Mistborn, the Mistborn trilogy with Vin, is perfect for introverts. It tells you that sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the most quiet one, is the one who says the least. So you guys, beware the quiet. So now let's talk about another book, and this is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. And this book is for those who know what it feels like to be invisible. I would recommend this book if you love lyrical, character-driven fantasy with themes of identity, freedom, and the human need to be seen, the human need to be remembered. So we follow Adeline LaRue, Addie, who lives in France in 1714, I believe it starts. She is desperate to escape an unwanted marriage. She's a very young girl, I think she's 16 at the time, so she makes a bargain for her freedom, but the price is a curse. Everyone who meets her will forget her eventually. She cannot leave a mark, she can't be remembered. So she can talk with someone, she can talk with people, but the moment she's out of their sight, she's been forgotten. They don't remember her. We are going to follow Addie for 300 years. She wanders through history unseen until one day in New York, somebody remembers her. I was immediately drawn in by V.E. Schwab's poetic prose. We really experience everything that she loses. In order to choose her destiny, she loses everything. She loses her family. No one remembers her. She loses her place in the world and even her name. We really feel this weight, the weight of the curse, and also this constant loneliness, this frustration that she feels throughout the years, the inability of being loved, but also the clever way that she finds to work around the curse. I forgot to say, but yeah, she cannot die. She's immortal. I did get the impression that in the middle of the book, it does get a bit repetitive. It's circling the same struggles that Addie experiences. I wished we had more variety in her experiences. For instance, the world really evolved for women, and I wanted to have her take on that. I wanted to have her thought about how the world changed for women, for women's condition. I wanted to have a reflection on it. She doesn't really say anything about that, and we see the same struggles. Despite that, I kept turning the pages. I wanted to know what would happen to Addie once she met this man that finally remembers her. Now, as an introvert, I found Addie's story deeply inspiring. Do you feel sometimes invisible, overlooked, or even forgotten? Because I do. And sometimes as introverts, it's even what we want. And yet, like Addie, we still find ways to exist. And in the end, we are able to connect with people, even if it's only in small, quiet ways. I rated this book 4.5 stars. And last but not least, I want to talk about Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. And this novel is for those who find peace in nature. If you love lyrical coming-of-age stories with a touch of mystery and a deep exploration of solitude, then this book is definitely for you. We follow Kaya. She has been abandoned by the entirety of her family by the age of 10 years old. And she's called the Marsh Girl because she lives in the marsh in South Carolina, I believe. So she's left all alone in the marsh. You can imagine how harsh this life must be. She doesn't have any resources. She has to learn how to survive. And over time, the marsh slowly becomes her home and also a protection. So it's a coming of age story, so we're gonna follow her since a very young age up until the end of her life. And as she grows up, she discovers friendship, she discovers love and heartbreak. And eventually she finds herself in the middle of a tragedy because a body is gonna be found. A young man has died in the marsh. And she is gonna be linked to that accident slash murder, we don't know. The beginning of this book is a little slow. The central mystery, which is the death of the young man, takes a backseat at first over Kaya's coming of age story. I enjoyed the second half of the book much more because maybe the mystery aspect of the book is more powerful. The pacing also picks up, and the book blends into elements of even thriller, I would say. There is a police investigation and a court drama. The marsh isn't just a background. The marsh is a key element to the story. It's described with so much detail and poetry. You feel its beauty and you can understand it. I loved the message about protecting nature and the importance of the marsh, how essential it is to our lives. It's also a story about prejudice, about human nature, about the quiet resilience of someone who's been underestimated her whole life. Just because, yeah, she's shy, she's quiet, she doesn't like to be seen, she prefers nature, and she's different. So that aspect of the book really resonated with me. This book brings so many emotions: tenderness, injustice, sadness, love. It is a powerful reflection on solitude, human connection, and also our relation with nature. These are my book recommendations for introverts. Stories that spoke to me in different ways, whether through quiet courage, the power of solitude, and also the power of small acts. As an introvert, I see pieces of myself in each of them, and I hope you find something here that feels like home to you too. If you have a favorite book that you think belongs to this list, let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!